Now for the Forge Podcast. Question for you. What's the power of your testimony if it's never shared? This is the Forge Podcast.
A ministry of Scottsdale Bible Church.
Yeah, that's it. I think everybody we pass by, we need to see, you know, again, whether it's somebody on the street, somebody in another country, made in the image of God. Yeah.
Well, welcome with that. Thanks for going down that road with me just for a minute. But welcome to the Forge Podcast.
Oh, thanks. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. Real quick, introduce who you are and what you do with Scottsdale Bible Church.
My name is Willie Dudley, and I lead the men's and marriage ministry out in Fountain Hills. I've got the best job of all the campuses, of all the jobs that Scottsdale Bible has. I love what I do. I get an opportunity to minister to men and meet and minister and build into the lives of men. I love doing that. You know, marriages, as strong as a marriage is how good the community is going to be. And I think sometimes we look at our communities and no matter where it is, whether it's a Scottsdale, Fountain Hills, or Phoenix, and when marriages go bad, communities struggle because mom and dad, there's no stability at home. I've seen it, over years in education is, a solid home gives a kid just a chance. It doesn't guarantee anything, just gives them a chance to be successful. But that's what I do. I lead the men's ministry, the marriage ministry. We meet every Tuesday night at Forge in Fountain Hills at our ministry center, it's a blessing. I live in Fountain Hills. I was a athletic director at Fountain Hills High School. I was a football coach at Fountain Hills High School, and while I was doing that, I moved from Scottsdale, where we were attending Scottsdale Bible here at Shea, and I went out and Neil Montgomery set me up with the folks at North Chapel with Bobby Brewer there, and they hired Bobby, they hired me at the same time at North Chapel, and so I left the whatever the count was, 2,000-3,000 people at the Shea service and walking into North Chapel in Fountain Hills to do men's ministry there, and I saw probably 30 people at our first service on Sunday, and I'm thinking, God, if you didn't call me here, I wouldn't be here.
Right.
And that's how I felt, and it was just not my style. I've always gone to a large church. I love the just what a larger church has to offer. But God called us to Sue and I called us to Fountain Hills in terms of being a teacher out there, and then leading men's ministry at North Chapel, and then eventually North Chapel merged with Scottsdale Bible during COVID. That's when they did the satellite campus, and so I sat down with all the folks that are, from Scott Anderson and all the folks about, he said, just carry on the ministry and tell. And Bill Cavness was there. Willie, we don't know what we're going to do yet. Eventually, Bill and then Rich Griffith. I don't know. Rich Griffith and I, we opened up the campus in Fountain Hills, and Rich and Bill just saying, hey, there'll be a time where you'll come on staff full time, or not full time, but to do the men's and marriage ministry. So,
this being the Forge Podcast, what has the Forge meant to you?
I think what is Forge? Forge is an outreach to men. When I think about Forge, it's an opportunity for men to connect with other men who are seeking to draw close to Christ in their walk, in their marriages, and it breaks my heart. I when I see men in church on Sunday, and they're not part of Forge. Like I met a guy yesterday, and I said, "Oh, I'm sorry I haven't met you." I said, "What are you doing on Tuesday night?" And the idea is, I see and meet people on Sunday every Sunday, and I try to meet and greet them. But the guys that come to Forge on Tuesday night, they're part of a community, and you get a chance to know them. They get a chance to know each other. And Forge is that community of believers that will take you and challenge you and push your buttons a little bit. That's what Forge is. To me, it's a community of men that are building the church, they're making disciples, and they're sharing the gospel. That's our call. When we get to what end do we meet on Tuesday night, is to be challenged and encouraged and to go do that.
And what kind of growth have you seen since the Forge and at Fountain Hills? Like, it can't help but grow outward. It can't help but change the lives of families and wives and husbands. And
I think that in Fountain Hills, people come and go, either temporarily they're in and out of town because they're our winter residents, or they are moving. They're in Fountain Hills for a while. They're there 4 or 5 years, and then their job takes them someplace else. And a couple guys, that just left. One went to Tennessee. His name is Ken, and one went to, I think they went to South Carolina, John. And you just see how those guys being part of Forge, where God took them and moved them into a spot where they wouldn't have gone there, I think, without being part of Forge.
Wouldn't have gone
to
Tennessee.
No, their growth, their spiritual growth.
Okay.
Their spiritual growth would have, because God took all of these guys, and challenges them. We would challenge them, God, to grow in their knowledge of the Scriptures, application of the Scriptures, and just being and looking at the world differently, and then looking at themselves differently, and you just see that, and you just, they're so encouraged by their time spent with the men of Forge, that when they come out the other side, God does a work. It's about God picking up these guys, walking with them, and growing them to do what God wants them to do. And both those guys, they took off and they said, no, God's going to have a plan for us there in Tennessee and South Carolina. But that's, to me, those are just two examples of many of our guys that are growing. I mean, with our Living Out Loud class, where, we got the guys challenged to go share the gospel. And those guys, like, I've made strides in not talking to anybody to now living a life of faith that's visible and engaging to people that God puts around them, whether it's the guy at Home Depot, because he's a construction guy, man. He goes to Home Depot all the time, so now he's learning how to build relationships with the guys and the people that are in his world that he spends a lot of time with, that are not believers or not followers. So
I'm glad you brought that up, because that's what I want to talk about. Explain your Living Out Loud. Explain your discipleship and your evangelism efforts up there.
It gets back to, I think, when I think about Forge, we want our men to come and gather Tuesday night, 6:30 to 8. But I always ask them, to what end do we gather? Mm-hmm. Why do we do that? Right. Because we gather, and they're great at building community. I mean, when you see them, they do a great job of meeting and greeting each other, welcoming people. They do a great job of doing that, and that's part of building the church. And then the next part, then, are we sharing the gospel, and are we making disciples? Well, I think 2 summers ago, as we wrapped up our Forge, we usually wrap up in May, and I asked our guys that were there, I said, okay, guys, raise your hand. How many of you know that we should share the gospel? And they all raised their hands. Right. I mean, everybody knows that we should share the gospel. And I said, now, honestly, how many of you feel comfortable doing it? And you know what happens? The ones, everybody goes down except for the missionaries.
Right.
Yeah, we've been doing it our whole life. We love it. And so I just told me, I said, we're not comfortable doing that. Mm-hmm. And so I got together 3 guys, and I asked them, Mike Floyd's a missionary, George Ross is a missionary, and he does missionaries. George does mission work all over the world. He does a radio station. What they do is they acquire, I would say, radio sermons. Mm-hmm. They put it together, and they translate it into different languages all over the world, and they broadcast all over the world. So we could put the Forge podcast on it. Sweet. People would listen to it. So George, and then Scott Mandeville, and I said, hey guys, will you please put together a curriculum? Let's meet, and I started with them, and then I just kind of pushed them and got out of their way. And they worked all summer long. 3 guys that were just asked given a task and asked to do it. Will you put together a curriculum that will help our guys be confident and bold in sharing the gospel? So they worked, they were excited about it. And so what we did is when we started in the fall, we just encouraged all.
And it was called Living Out Loud.
And they called it Living Out Loud. and that's what they came up with, Living Out Loud.
With the sole purpose of training guys up in spreading the gospel.
Oh, getting back to the basics. I mean, when you first become a believer, you're sharing it, and God's doing a great work, and then all of a sudden you just pull back. And so what happened is they went to the basics of, like, if you're going on a mission trip, here's the gospel in a cube, here's the gospel, what Will Graham does, what Billy Graham does. So the idea is they're training people, they're practicing, they're saying, hey, doing role playing. They're literally reminding guys, this is how it can be done, this is why it should be done as they go. So then I told them what I want them to do is I want them to go 2 weeks on Tuesday night of teaching and encouraging for them to get into it. Then the third one, go on a field trip. Let's get into town, and what we do is, we gather them together, we pray for them, and they get there 6:30. We have our general conference. Everybody's together, announcements and information. And we got all the Living Out Loud guys, and we put our hands on them, pray them out, and then they go into Fountain Hills. They go into different places, and they just practice what they did, or what they apply what they practiced for the last 2 weeks. Then they come back, they do kind of a post game film review, and how'd you do, what'd you think, who got involved, and so they do that, and they just evaluate, and they just do that. And I got, again, Pete Boyer, man, this has caused me to just kind of see the world differently.
Right.
And so guys that are like, Mike Hoops is like, I know God's calling me. I've missed 2 semesters, and he's like, this semester, he goes, I know he's calling me to go do it, so I'm going in. And so the guys are going in that, but with the purpose of, okay, now live out loud. And the great story is, they put together this curriculum, and then they started looking at some stuff, and they found a book called Living Out Loud, written from somebody on the East Coast, almost line by line,
really,
without being plagiarized. It's just like, this is what the Holy Spirit did with one guy. And so that's became their book called Living Out Loud. And they checked it for the author's credibility, and they checked it for, associations. You don't want somebody who doesn't belong being part of the curriculum. So they did that. So they created the Living Out Loud class for our guys in Fountain Hills. And for me, it's like when I see those, 20 guys meet every Tuesday through the semester, and then they get a new class in the spring, and I see, 7,000 people that go to Scottsdale Bible or whatever our number is now, and say, boy, if we could just get our guys, our people, our women, our kids to say, figuring out how to live out loud in a bold way, like it calls us to do in Acts, in a confident way, and again, the people that it isn't taking your Bible and hitting them upside the head. It's just loving on them,
right?
Acknowledge them, seeing them. Sometimes it's as simple as, we're going to pray at a table. Hey, we're getting ready to pray. Is there anything we can pray for you?
Yeah.
To the waiter or the waitress, and very seldom does the waiter or the waitress say, no, I don't know. Yeah. I go, well, we'll just pray for your success, or we'll pray for your health, or we'll, and that's kind of the idea of living out loud.
Now, is that something is that program only up at Fountain Hills?
Yeah, it's only in Fountain Hills.
Is that accessible to?
Yeah, well, I was talking to in my the meeting that we'll have with our staff, our men's ministry staff. I said, I'd love to, when we do our retreat, in April.
Oh, yeah.
When we're kind of working on what that looks like, but I'm thinking we need to have that be part of who we are in Forge, where it's whether it's a class or a section where we say we're going to offer this, and this is why we're going to offer it, to encourage people. And it could easily be, done at Shea or Cactus or Northridge.
I love it. I mean, the one thing that I love, you said it this morning, and you said it when we met for coffee, is that to what extent do we meet?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Knowledge is great, but then if it's not applied, what's it worth? It's useless.
Yeah.
And knowledge of the Lord, great. Come together, meet, build that community, but then the first chance you get, go step out. I think we all need more of that. I know our Shea Forge needs that.
Yeah.
Sure, there's a bunch of guys coming in just getting healed and filled and restored. Awesome, great.
Right.
Take your time in doing that. But then there's a lot of guys that were just sitting on the sidelines. Man, if we had even a fraction of the guys at Shea and then just go out
with the intention,
with
the intention of just living your life. You're not changing anything. You're just living your life because every day
it changes the way you live your life. It changes the perspective and the lens at which
our guys at Living Out Loud, they say living on mission.
Yeah.
You're living on mission. George Ross is like, man, when we go out, we're living on mission to see the people and to touch the people with God's love as we live a life that interacts with strangers, or whoever. So yeah, it's cool to see it, and it's encouraging, and but we also have some of the guys that are like, I'm not ready to go yet,
right?
And then it's like Mike Hoops, where Mike, I think he said this. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Is that I think he said, I'm not going the first session, I'm not going the second semester, and he felt like he just had to go the third. He's like, he goes, I'm just feeling God's
what are some? I mean, I could list my apprehensions, but what are some of the apprehensions of why guys don't go?
I think it's fear. I think fear.
Rejection.
Fear of rejection, and again, the class takes you through. How to handle that, how to expect it, and certain people are going to just absolutely reject you like they reject Christ. I mean, that's just what's going to happen.
Yeah.
It won't be the first time you get rejected. It won't be the last time. And you just, God puts people around us who need, and the thing that I love too is as our guys are living this out, for the last year and a half, Rustin's talking on the stage about how I just feel called to go do this, to interact with people, to see people differently, and he's doing, then he's calling the whole church to do that, and part of it is equipping that makes them feel comfortable. Like Pete's like, I need to be equipped. So when I do go out, I feel confident and bold and comfortable doing that. I think fear, I think it's, other people are gifted in evangelism. Thank God that George and Mike and Scott are.
Right.
It's not my gift, but that's part of it. I think,
I hid behind that for a long time.
Sure.
I hid behind, that's not my calling.
Yeah.
And then, so I excused it. I'm like, nope, it's time to, it may not be my strength and my gifting, but I'm still called to do it.
Absolutely.
Right. I was talking to my wife about it last night. I'm like, just talking about the gifts of the Spirit, being a part of the body, being members of the body. I said, listen, Nolan Ryan has an incredible arm, right?
Right.
With his right arm, he can throw 104 miles an hour. He has a left arm too, and it can still throw, but it can't do 104 miles an hour.
Sure, we're gifted.
But this one is gifted to do this. The other one still is an arm. It can still throw. It can still get out there and go do it. I mean, we're called to use it. He's called to use that.
Could you imagine walking around all day long just because you're right-handed with your left arm tied to your pocket? Yeah, we'd never do that.
We'd do whatever we could to break free and to use it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. So it's cool to see that.
I love that. My first thought, I'm like, man, is there any way we could get together and put like a little 60-second promo video together? I'll just shoot it all.
They would love
you
it.
have one.
No,
unless you have one.
Scott put together one, but I would just, the guys are really, you could call three of them in. When they said you guys were doing podcasts, one of the things I did is I told our guys, hey, fill out the information and see if you want to be part of the podcast. But I mean, they'd all come in and talk to you and just kind of tell their story, and they will tell it with more passion and more zeal than I could ever do. And I love it. I mean,
I would love it. I don't know if you saw one of the last podcasts we did was the Forge guys that went to Turkey for the missions trip. And so we had all 6 or 8 of them in here.
Yeah.
And they all did a 5-minute segment. We compiled that together into an hour and some podcast, just kind of recapping the trip and how it impacted each one of them individually. And then I cut it together for just a 60-second promo at Forge, so guys could kind of see it. Same thing. If I give you permission to, if they want to come on the podcast, I would love to have 3 of them come in and we'll talk 1, 2, 3.
Sure.
And then I'll cut it into a promo and put some music to it. If you guys have pictures of any of the outings that you've gone on. Anyway, that's a side note we can talk about. I would love to put a promo together that even...
they would love to do that, and I'll talk to them tomorrow night. I think one of the things too is every year Fountain Hills. Fountain Hills is such a great town. We have a town parade, Thanksgiving Day parade.
Lucky.
And it's hysterical because
that's the things that you miss. Big towns.
It's so good, and so every year if you apply and you say I want to be in the parade, you could take your bicycle and ride your bicycle and be in the parade as long as you did the application, paid the fee. So our guys are doing the living out loud guys. They're going into the parade, okay, and they have tracks that are made. Their last year is so good is they would go into the crowd, hand out tracts, and start conversations with people at the parade. I was there. It's like, and the parade doesn't stop for you. So as the parade goes around the Avenue of the Fountains, you're stopped back here and you're running to get caught up with your group. But so we're going to be in that again this year. And we invited the women's ministry. If they want to be part of it, they can come be part of it. The youth can be part of it. The kids can be part of it. We're going to walk in the parade, but with the idea that we're going to live out loud and we're going to share the gospel as you go, which is just one of many ways that they do it. So that's good stuff. I mean, I would encourage it. I would love for, to me, it's like every church in the nation should be teaching that and encouraging that, because the alternative is, we just have our left arm tied down and we're not 100%. We're not using it.
Yep.
So.
Thank you for listening to the Forge Podcast.